Sorry. New technology. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first meeting of the Performance Overview and Scrutiny Performance Panel. And in this council chamber, first time that we met in here, Overview and Scrutiny. So great to be down here rather than upstairs. So hope everybody can hear everybody. Last time I was in the Lancaster and I couldn't hear anybody at all. But anyway, there we are. There we are. That's my moment to start with. I'm Councillor John Walker, and I'm the chair of this committee. Councillor Roy Lees on my right is the vice chair. If you are present in the council chamber, please raise your hand when you wish to speak. When I invite you to speak, please turn on your microphone, and when you have finished speaking, turn it off. If you're joining virtually, please keep your microphone muted and video turned off when you are not speaking. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function on your iPad to make any comments. This is to ensure each member has the opportunity to speak and that no one is speaking over one another. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if that's not possible, a new date and time will be organised. Please can all members present in person respect the COVID measures in place. They are for everyone's safety, and please ensure any mobile phones are switched off. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm goes, please exit from the way you came in. Right, preliminaries out of the way. So before we start, can I just welcome, I think, 3 new members to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and 3 members to the Performance Panel, and 1 member first time at the Performance Panel. So we're all new, so we should have a good evening. I'm certain you've got plenty of questions to ask about everything we're going to discuss tonight. So, can I welcome the 3 councillors who are virtual at the moment? I think Adrian, Cabinet Member for this session tonight. Councillor James Nevitt is there. I don't know who the councillor on the right is. She just observe. Are you observing? Yeah. Welcome. Hope you enjoy the evening. Right, let's start. Apologies.
There are no apologies.
Right, thank you. Minutes of the meeting on Thursday, 4th of March, Overview and Scrutiny Performance Panel. There was only 2 there. Roy was the only one who was present. Thank you. Any comments about the meeting? Any issues? Roy, are you all happy with the minutes as they are? Very good, thank you very much. Okay. We'll move on then to item 2. Oh, no, item 2 is declaration of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. Yes, Julia. All right, okay. Councillor Lees will answer your query. Can you press your button, please?
Regarding Chorley Bus Station. I noticed the report was just for noting, but is there an update, and is it possible to re-look at the situation? Because obviously status quo isn't moving anything forward.
Yes, I'm certain we can do that. Do you want to raise it at another meeting, at the full Overview and Scrutiny meeting next week? Okay, right. Right, we'll go back to the declaration of interest. If you have any pecuniary interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally you should leave the room before the business starts. You do have the same rights to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right, and then leave immediately afterwards. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter concerned. Right. Nobody's got any declaration of interest, so can we then move on to item 3, which is performance focus, customer and digital theme with the director. Are you going to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to talk through the report, if that will help, on behalf of the executive member, Councillor Adrian Lowe, who is also on the call.
Yes.
So the last time I was invited to present an overview of performance was October last year, and it seems quite a significant time away. At that point, we were in the midst of a world pandemic, and we were experiencing some operational challenges in day-to-day service delivery. But I'm proud to say and report, in respect of my own service area, we have managed successfully to deliver the majority of services with little impact throughout the course of the last 14 months. I'm going to just talk through the report very briefly. I'm be more than happy to answer any questions at the end of the report. Just working through that, clearly the contextual information in respect of this particular report covers a summary in relation to the budget position for the service, an update in relation to shared services, which particularly my directorate and my services has endured over the past, since January this year. Key performance in relation to my service, and also some of the key corporate projects that my directorate is delivering on. So just working through the report, on page 8 of the agenda pack, the last year in relation to the particular in relation to the pandemic initially, we had a complete lockdown situation, and since then the street scene service completely resumed operational duties. But throughout that period there were some specific projects highlighted at paragraph 6 in relation to the key objectives for the year were delivered. Part of that was delivering the Spruce Parks project, Mini Meadows and Wildflower Corridors programme, 5 Chorley Parks retaining the green flag status, Astley Park receiving in bloom recognition. We also procured and replaced our refuse collection vehicle for empty and litter bins, and my directorate supported the implementation of the council's website. Partway through the year, both councils, South Ribble Council and Chorley Council, agreed to continue sharing further services. And last year, the decision to share services in respect of my directorate, which covers customer services, street scene, neighbourhood services and ICT, were also merged at that point. And I was appointed the shared director in January this year, and since then have been responsible for the operational delivery of both those service areas. Prior to that, last year, I was a director solely for Chorley Council, and at that point, my service area also included a wider remit of services, which included regulatory services, including planning, building control, licensing, and some other ancillary services. But since my appointment in January, those services have moved to a new director, Jonathan Nord, who's responsible for those aspects, but I've retained the remainder of those services, but clearly in respect of both councils. Just working through the report, so the financial position in relation to the service is documented at paragraph 9. The budget for the service is just over £6 million, and there's a variance of £285,703, which equates to 4.7%, and that is mainly attributable to vacant poles within the service area. That fund has transferred across to the current financial year, and we reinvest in the service. Further down, in relation to the general performance overview for 2021, The indicators are outlined from paragraph 13, indicating green is on target or better than performance, blue is worse than performance within a threshold of 5%, and then there's a triangle there, red, which is outside the threshold of 5%. So the key measures for my service areas are split into some distinct areas. The first one is in relation to ICT and the number of online requests that we receive for services through the website online. That has seen an increase, a significant increase in relation to the target of the past 12 months, which I'm sure won't come as a surprise to people given the lockdown situation and given the fact that people have resorted to other ways of communicating, and the council is no different in that situation. So there's been a significant increase in that, and it's been supported towards the end of the financial year with the release of a new website. The next indicator is percent of dissatisfaction with the service received. That is also better than performance, which is very good to see given the challenges of the past year. And then beyond paragraph 17, it goes into the revenues and benefits service, and they're largely broken down into two distinct areas: the amount of money the council collects in relation to council tax, the money it collects in relation to business rates and the performance in relation to those two, the average time the council takes to process requests for new applications for housing benefit and change of circumstance applications, and then there's a final performance indicator there in relation to the refuse collection, which we partner with FCC in relation to the mist bins per 100,000. So I'm sure members of the panel will appreciate that the operating conditions over the last 12 months have been quite significant, particularly operationally and financially for our businesses and for people. The council, in respect of both those areas of activity, largely suspended recovery action throughout the course of the past 12 months last year. And other than sending out some reminder notices, has not continued any recovery action in respect of those two items. Now, given those circumstances and given that it has been challenging to collect income in respect of those, I think the outturn performance hasn't been surprising, and to some extent is understandable in terms of the climate. In respect of the average time taken to process new housing benefit claims and change of circumstance, we've actually improved on the performance for the previous year. This has seen a continuous improvement in performance over the past at least 6 years, year on year, and it's partly helped by the introduction of new technology which has automated some of those processes and introduced artificial intelligence and machine learning, which has really improved the speed of processing for customers. And the final one is in relation to the number of mist bins per 100,000. I'm sure members will appreciate that over the last 12 months, certainly during the pandemic, there has been a significant increase in the amount of residual waste and recycling waste products as a result of the lockdown situation, more people working from home. And given that there is still performances outside the expected target of 30 per 100,000, I would still recognise and appreciate the efforts of the contractor in this particular case, given the significant increase in volume and the very difficult operational challenges that they've had to face in delivering the service, which overall has been very successful in its delivery. Moving on to street scene performance. This is split down into the percentage of litter bins emptied. This is high street litter bins, the percentage of street cleansing undertaken on time, and grass cutting that's achieved as part of the grounds maintenance programme. The target there is 80%. In all those cases, we've outperformed compared to the previous year. The only one that's slightly outside but within the threshold is ad hoc service requests that are received for that particular service. But I'm sure members will recognise that although the target was 80% and it's worse than the previous quarter, the previous year's performance, it is significantly high at 96.2%. Moving to agenda page 13 in relation to ICT. The key performance indicator there is in relation to the overall projects delivered as part of the ICT strategy, which was agreed in 2017. And the indicator there is green. The majority of those projects have been delivered and delivered on time. Over the next paragraph, it talks about the corporate projects for the delivery during 2021, namely the website, which was delivered, although it was slightly affected by the COVID pandemic, and also the programme for delivering a cleaner and more attractive borough. Most of those objectives have been delivered. The key corporate projects for 21-22, the current financial year, is to extend the programme to improve street scene services and continue with delivering the new digital strategy, which was approved as part of the shared services programme. I think I'm going to leave it at this point. Hopefully, I've given you an overall summary in terms of the general performance in relation to my directorate. More than happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. It looks and sounds very good. Your directorate is going very well. I'll start the first question. The shared services. How did you find sorting it out really when you first to get the two teams working together? Did you have any great problems, especially with people working from home, getting people together? How did you manage to get them all crackling?
Thank you for the question, Chair. I think we've been fortunate that the investments undertaken over the past 5 years and the support that members have provided in relation to the investment in technology in particular put the council in a very fortunate position and enable people to effectively work from home when the pandemic started. And so largely, although there have been challenges operationally, the majority of services have continued to be delivered. Partway through the year, in the final quarter of this year, as you quite rightly point out, I was appointed as the Director for Shared Services for those two areas. And it's very early on in the stages of the delivery of that programme. We're currently looking at understanding where the opportunities are to align systems, align structures, and in relation to the ICT team and the customer services team, the Shared Services Joint Committee has recently agreed management structures to move to a single operating model for those two services. And the first stage of that for ICT has been implemented. So there is a single management structure in place to deliver ICT services across both councils. It has recently, this week in actual fact, on Monday, it was agreed for customer services, and we're currently out to consultation with staff in relation to that. So at this moment in time, we are looking at implementing the ICT digital strategy and looking at implementing the shared operating models. And I'm hoping to be in a position in the next 12 months to be able to report how successfully that has been achieved.
What was that? Anybody got any questions? Yes. I won't call you Councillor Aidy.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I've got 3 questions, or 3 areas I wanted to ask a couple of questions on. Do you want me to do them all together and then, or do you want to do it one at a time? How do you prefer to do it? One at a time. Okay, the first one was on page 10. Well, obviously the number of service requests online, has massively smashed its target, which is, no one's going to be surprised by that, I would say. So I suppose my question is really, how many of these, what do you think is a realistic target going forward? A number of people who have changed how they contact the council will probably continue to contact the council in that way. Some will obviously go back to face-to-face services when they arrive because they will prefer that option. What kind of number do you think we should be looking at for, 12 months' time?
I would expect that, largely speaking, I think you made some salient points there in relation to how the performance over the last 12 months will continue in the future. I consider that, certainly in terms of experience, that the demand for online services and the convenience that offers will continue. Certainly in terms of the infrastructure, the council is investing further in relation to online services to offer that level of convenience. But it's important to point out that that is not at the risk of looking at the existing and other channels of communication that people still rely and depend upon. And one of those is in relation to face-to-face services. So as part of the digital strategy and the customer services strategy, the council acknowledges that there will always be a demand for face-to-face service, and that will continue, but it will be supported very much with the underlying aspiration that we would invest more into services, because that's where the biggest area of convenience we can afford residents, because of the speed and the accuracy in which that processing can occur. And if you look at what I outlined earlier on in relation to housing benefit performance, one of the reasons why we've been able to continuously improve and outperform that target is because of the investment in technology. And if you compare that with perhaps a decade ago, 10, 12 years ago, when some of that technology didn't exist, the result of that meant that people were contacting in very traditional ways through paper-based applications, and that itself has another layer of complexity and delay on the process. And as we've progressed through the years, people have realised the convenience that digital services provides and the speed at which decisions are made. And that level of convenience, along with the pandemic, can only result in more access online, but that will be supported by some of the other access channels I've mentioned earlier.
Thank you for that. I agree largely with what you've said, but I do feel you didn't answer my question, which was what kind of realistic target should we expect going forward?
So the target at the moment for 2021, which is last year's, was at 35%, and the Q4 performance, the outturn, if I've read that right, is for Q4. So the Q4 performance was the outturn performance was 52.74%. Well, as a director for this service, the previous year's performance is generally the baseline against which we measure new ongoing performance. So in this particular case, the target will be the outturn figure for the year last year, as is the case for some of the other performance indicators I've mentioned, and the performance would measure against that target. So at the end of this financial year, we'll look at what the target was last year and report that back in terms of performance. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
It does, thank you. I can move to my next one. That's okay, thank you. Next one was the next table, where council tax and business rates, table point 17, page 11. If I heard you correctly, did you say at the moment the council isn't participating in recovery of non-payment? And if that's the case, when is it likely to be restarted, and what's the potential loss of income we're looking at to the council? Thank you.
Yeah, so throughout last year, other than sending out reminder notices and looking at having a conversation with those people who had significant debts to the council, and providing support, largely recovery action against debts throughout the previous financial year was largely suspended. In terms of the performance, for 2021, the net collectible debit for council tax was £70 million, and the outturn was £69 million against that. So the collection was down 0.9% on the previous years. That equates to £639,000 less money collected compared to the previous year. The large part of that is precept charges for the county council. So there is about 11% of that £600,000, which is Chorley Council's debt. So that's the amount of money that was not collected as a result of the suspension of recovery action last year. We're now in a position where we have agreed, and this is subject to being able to take book appointments in court and a variety of other activities. But largely, we will be commencing recovery action next month in relation to initial reminder notice in relation to outstanding debts for both business rates and council tax, and they will follow a statutory programme of recovery, which is stipulated by government. And that is required to satisfy a particular procedure and give people the opportunity to pay and come to arrangement to pay with the council. As part of that programme, the government has also introduced this year a breathing space initiative in recognition of people who may struggle paying council tax or business rates to the local authority, and provide a grace period of around 60 days to come up with a programme to pay some of that debt back. And that's something that's been implemented from May, and consequently, as a result of that and a combination of other initiatives, the recovery action will start from next month.
Thank you. That sounds very reasonable and quite reassuring too. So I appreciate the answer on that. I suppose my last one was just looking at the points on page 12, number 20 on the street scene. Again, I'm new to this, but I would have thought 90% sounded more like a target should be aiming for rather than 80%. I don't know whether, I mean, the stats seem to indicate that wouldn't be unreasonable, even despite the situation in the pandemic that you've been working through. Just I felt if I was talking to residents, if I was saying how many litter bins are emptied on time, I think 9 out of 10 sounds more like a target we should be aiming for rather than 4 out of 5. I just wondered what your thoughts were. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. The performance for street scene requests completed on time has been increased to 85% for this coming year, because these are last year's targets. The other indicators, particularly around grounds maintenance, is a challenging target, because it's very much dependent on the weather. And in some cases, the weather can have an adverse effect on that particular aspect of service delivery. But I appreciate the comment made in relation to some of the other targets set, and it's something that I can look at revising if it's felt that overall the percentage hasn't been achieved. But ultimately, the outturn figure would ordinarily be one of those indicators to set the precedence for trying to achieve improved performance in the following year. In this particular case, because there are a number of variable factors that go into this, it's been set at 80%.
Yes.
Yeah, just 2 questions.
Can you put your thing in?
Yep, sorry. So, yeah, just 2 things. Firstly, obviously, I'm looking at the refuse collection and recyclables, and obviously we've been through a stage of lockdown and people buying things from home. Has the collections of cardboard increased, or I know we tackled that. Some people get a lot of things by post.
Yeah, all waste streams have increased significantly over the past 12 months, in particular cardboard, because of home deliveries. The tonnage collected has significantly improved, and I'm happy to share that outside this meeting and send that to you, Councillor Lees. There's been a huge unprecedented demand on recycling in particular, because of green credentials, residents are more aware of the environmental impact, and our recycling generally more. One of the key focuses moving forward is to move away from concentrating on contractual obligations of FCC, who we partner with in relation to refuse collection, and put more of a focus on recycling targets for this year onwards. So that's something that.
I was just wondering, cardboard is only once a fortnight for people bins getting over.
Yeah, so cardboard is once every calendar month. All the other recycling collections are fortnightly. But the council did take the initiative to change the containers, which were limited in terms of size, to providing 240 litre bins for cardboard. And that's one of the reasons why the frequency of collection moved from fortnightly to monthly, but at the same time, the capacity and the volume of the receptacle increased significantly from previously a pod or a container to 240 litre bin. But you know, I have had contacts recently where people have required more space to recycle cardboard and paper, and that's something that we're looking at providing. If there's excess waste, the contractor will remove that if it's left conveniently by the bin. But we are looking at increasing and looking at other ways of increasing the opportunity to recycle more.
Secondly, I didn't see it myself, but somebody's referred me to an article which was in the Evening Post about a data breach a few months ago. I've not particularly heard anything where people were getting into information about other people who were complaining, etc. Can you give me any indication of any answers on that, and has it been addressed, especially with the shared services situation?
Yeah, so what you're referring to there is, so historically, for convenience, we enabled customers to be able to receive information from the council that would give them an indication of how the service request was progressing without revealing personal information. So it was just a status request in relation to where what progress the council was making in relation to the service that they requested. That was quite some number of years ago, which hadn't been reviewed. And one of the reasons why that was introduced was largely for the convenience of residents not having to, or negating the need for them to log on to a variety of different systems. And rather than do that, they would receive an email that would give them that higher level overview without having to refer back to systems. And it was the whole reason behind designing that was for convenience, and it was just to provide high level information. One of those emails was sent to a resident in relation to a service request, and the reference number within that email was manipulated, and they managed to get hold of information in relation to a separate service request, and then essentially run that several times to access other service request statuses in relation to other requests made to the council. That particular person highlighted to the council. The council acted quickly to resolve that situation and take that system offline. It also reissued the resident and put some initial media information out to reassure people. And it voluntarily, the council reported itself to the ICO to investigate that particular incident. The ICO has since ruled on that and said there was no breach undertaken because no sensitive information in relation to people's private information, bank accounts, names, and other person-related information was not part of that service request or wasn't accessed. And on that basis, the ICO ruled that a breach hadn't taken place, but nonetheless, we've secured that particular system, and it's a lot tighter in terms of the data is now shared within that system. So in effect, what's happened is the reference numbers that's generated by the system are now randomized, so it's more difficult for people to try and pre-guess what those numbers will be to access that information. Is that helpful? It's quite complicated. I've tried to summarize it as best possible.
Yeah, just
Thanks, Chair. I'm just coming back. It's just what Councillor Lee's mentioned about the cardboard collection. Because obviously people have been buying more online and throwing more away and recycling a lot more at home. Would the council be looking at making the cardboard collection instead of once a month, every fortnight, possibly, in the future?
So, we always welcome feedback from residents about recycling and any comments that they've got or improvements that they want to make in relation to our services. And that's one of the things that is continuously something that we monitor as part of our service improvements. You know, it was a conscious decision the council took to move that from a fortnightly service to a monthly collection. It's a very efficient way of doing that. There were significant efficiencies that were derived from that particular contract when that was re-let. And as I've explained just previous to this question, the increase in the volume of recycling capacity has significantly increased compared to what was provided before. Residents always have the option to increase the bin, which is a 240 litre brown bin, to have 2 bins if they feel that they've got a greater need to recycle and more cardboard products that they're producing. So essentially, there are 2 options available. One is if you can't justify having an extra bin, to leave the additional cardboard next to your bin for collection. If you feel that you're on the periphery of full capacity at the end of that 4-week cycle, then you've got the option to have another bin. And as I said before, we're looking at reviewing that service continuously. And there will be a point at which the government generally is looking at initiatives and reviewing how waste is collected and recycled as part of a national strategy. And as part of that, there will be an opportunity to review what the current strategy is for collection and whether there's any opportunity to make further improvements.
I've got a couple of questions. Possibly Councillor Lowe might want to answer these. On page 8, item 6, it says 5 Chorley parks retaining green flag status in 2020. That's great, very good. But these 5 parks have been getting the green flag now since possibly 2010 when I was an exec member. I'm just wondering if the council are looking at other parks to get green flag recognition over the next few years.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you mentioned, consistently the 5 parks have retained green park status. We're always green flag status, should I say. We're always on the lookout for practical ways of putting suitable sites in, depending upon resource issues, etc. If you've got any suggestions, Chair, by all means, send them through and we'll take a look at them. It's obviously a process to go through, but we're quite happy to look at any suggestions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I've 1 or 2 in mind. I'll have a discussion with you later on, not necessarily today or the next few weeks. On the mini meadows and wildlife corridor programs, some people like them, some people don't. Round Whitland, Clayton, they do look very good. But there's an area which is Carbrook. Now, it isn't now in my ward, so I can't do much of it. I do walk my dog through there every day. And the problem I've got is that everything's got out of the growth this year has been because presumably of the weather, a very wet May, dry June, or wet April, dry May. All the growth has been double what it was previous years. And we have, it's called Carbrook, and there's a brook that meanders through the valley and the problem is that you can't see the brook now because it's all the banks are overgrown. And I do find it very sad that walking there through Carbrook, but nobody can see the brook. Now, I don't know what can be done about it because you have got this policy of letting, for the environment, let the grass grow and the nettles grow and everything else, really. But it just seems a bit sad that you can't see a meandering brook. Water is very calming to people, and that is just my thought. Other people might be happy with it, I don't know. But the other thing with the long grass, of course, is that when you're walking your dog, especially if someone gets them off the lead, to go into the grass, do the business, come out, and then nobody can get into where they've been because of the nettles and everything else. So I do find it a bit difficult for residents to overcome these problems, really. Have you any comments?
Yes, Chair. In terms of, I think you summed it up quite nicely at the start of your remarks, where when you introduce wildflower meadows, wildlife corridors, some people love them, some people hate them, for want of a better expression. It's a balance and it's a judgment that we've increased the number of sites that we've put forward. We've experienced some slight issues from an operational point of view in terms of, because of, like you've mentioned, the weather, etc., and also the blend of the seeds that we put down are being delayed in coming through. But I give you the reassurance, Chair, that all the sites that we've identified have been inspected, and we'll take action and hope that, to pardon the phrase, they turn to be the blooming success that they have been in the past. On the specific issues, Chair, in terms of Carbrook, I take on board your suggestion. It's certainly there's certain areas that we can have a look at because we want to get the balance right between people in effect enjoying the natural environment, and if there is, from an operational point of view, certain measures that we can take, we can have a look at those specific instances. But in general, Chair, these corridors and meadows are proving a success, and it's contributing to the wider council's green agenda.
It probably be my own fault, really, because I have a meeting with the officers usually in September when I was at the council for Clayton. We used to walk on that area, and I used to point out various areas I felt need cutting back and cutting down. But this year we've got Councillor Clifford. I'm not saying against him, but of course he's the champion for the environment. So he's really siding with letting the grass grow, and I'm siding with cutting the grass back and the bushes back. So we had a bit of a conflict. This September, of course, I can't do that because it's not my ward. So we'll have to see what happens next year.
Thanks, John. I was going to bring it up in the next agenda item because that's where I saw the comments, but as first Roy and Sarah raised it, I've had a number of residents contact me as well about capacity for cardboard recycling, working from home, and these are already people with the large 240 litre bins, and they're not particularly keen to have another one on the drive. You've got 3 or 4 already, it's starting to take up quite a bit of space. I suppose my question was going to be, and I also regret not raising this at our planning meeting we had the other day, was when is the contract up for renewal, and if we did an overview and scrutiny task group on this, because it seems to be an issue for a number of residents, would that be of any value to you if we perform that at some point in the next few months, subject to, Chair's approval?
Yes, thank you. I mean, basically, we'll talk about the work programme at the full overview of the Scrutiny Committee next Thursday, so you can probably raise that question again.
Sorry, but the question at this point is, when's the contract up for renewal? Because we want to do it at a point where it was useful to the council to consider changes. If you said you were locked in a contract for 2 years that you couldn't really change, it might not deliver much if we did it now.
Yeah, Councillor Urquhart. So this is a relatively new contract. It's only been implemented. I think this is the second year that's it's in operation. So it's early on in terms of its longevity. The contract period has another 5-6 years to go.
Yeah, just you say you've had various people ringing up about excess cardboard. I've had one in particular, lady who rang us. She says her neighbours are taking her cardboard, and that's because she's running a business from home. And I've had to say to her that, obviously your business is creating it. You should be looking at your own method of getting rid of it. We can't take. I don't think we can take on private businesses waste.
Is it just a matter for discussion at the next meeting to see where we think we want to go on it? Possibly.
I'm just one more. I've got a request now, councillor or I see. We've lots of new members now, not necessarily on our screen, but in the full council. And I do find sometime in your directorate, trying to get hold of officers, we don't really know who they all are, who's the top man or the second in command, etc. I just wondered over the next few weeks if you could let councillors know the bosses, the officers and the people in running the various street scene activities, really.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah.
I'll provide that information.
I've graved out, in fact, I've got some here I want to, when you leave tonight, to take with you. I contacted, I won't mention the office name, a fortnight ago about some grass cutting, and I haven't had a reply at all. Bosses to get hold of him to say, come on, what's happening? Is he ill? Is he off work or what, really?
Mm-hmm. So, as you know, Chair, that there is an established procedure for raising concerns in relation to service requests or failures in service on behalf of residents or directly from members. And that procedure is only in place to try and understand exactly how quickly we respond to people, how if there's a particular issue with response times, as is the case in this instance. I can look back at the point at which it was initially logged, which officers have responded, and when the service was delivered. And so there's a procedure there in place online, and you can do that by contacting council officers by telephone, the contact centre, or going online and reporting that. But I do appreciate that sometimes things don't go according to plan, and you may not get the response that you're looking for. And in those cases, it's perfectly acceptable to ring officers directly. But in all cases, if you're struggling to get hold of an officer, or if you're struggling to get a reasonable response, then you can always contact me. My details are online, and you can call me or leave a message or email me, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible to look into the details.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. It's just that with lots of new members, I think there's been quite a few changes of staff as well, that if you could know how it worked down the line, things might be a lot easier, really. Anybody got any further? Councillor Lowe?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of that specific point, obviously do appreciate that the first point of call is through the contact centre, and that's where the service request first of all being dealt with. If, as Asim has mentioned, if there is in effect an unreasonable delay, then that can be escalated through the normal channels. And from a street scene point of view, then Chris Wormsley is the street scene manager, or as Asim as the director as a point of contact. Whilst I appreciate it could be frustrating, we have to go through the proper channels. Otherwise, we could be in danger of having preferential treatment just because of the titles that we hold, i.e. councillors. So, but we're more than happy, Chair, to, and I've experienced this because I've been copied in as the exec member. If there is an unreasonable delay, then it's quite natural you want answers to why something's not been done. But give the service in effect a reasonable period of time to deal with it. You know, I don't know the specifics you're talking about, but quite happy for the team to look into it. But like I said, I just wanted to reiterate that our first point of call is the contact centre, because that assists us with producing reports to your committee and the wider council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good explanation. But I just say I think a lot of new members will find it difficult sometimes to know who's dealing with the waste bins, who's dealing with the grass cutting, etc., etc. That's all. And if we knew the names, it would help a great deal. Okay, any further questions? Well, can I thank Steve for being here tonight and Councillor Lowe. Your director seems to be going very well. I know you've had, I won't say problems, but the shared services, I was at the shared services meeting on Monday night, and it would appear both South Ribble and yourselves are working well together. So let's hope it continues in further shared services over the coming months and years, really. So well done to that. And I say it, as regards bin collections, I've always spoken highly of the bin collection in Whittle. It's still going very well. You can all put your clock by the time the bins arrive, really. The lorries arrive. So no, it all seems going very well. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Chair.
If you want to depart, you can do. If you want to stop, it's entirely up to you. Sorry, I think Eddie wants to. Pardon, Eddie?
I wasn't sure.
Okay, so thank you again. So we can move on to, when I get myself organised here, the next item, which is the Q4 performance report, which is Howard Anthony. Welcome to Chorley. Is this the first time in the council chambers? Welcome to Chorley, anyway. I understand you work for South Ribble, but you've got both jobs to do. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, you can present the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I was previously with South Ribble Borough Council as part of shared services. I've joined Chorley, and I head up the performance and partnerships team, which is with Vicky Willits as the performance and transformation service lead. So I'd like to present the Q4 report this evening. Generally, this covers the January to March period, which is the final period of a reporting year. And we can look that performance has actually been very good despite the challenging circumstances that everybody has found themselves in. So 84% of the projects that are on the, and this is reporting with the new corporate strategy, are rated green. 8% rated as not started, which translates as 1, and 8% rated as amber. We report these by exception, so I'll go through those in a moment. But the general delivery of the projects is continuing really well, despite some of the challenges that we obviously face. The indicators, now we have 50% of the indicators are on track or above target. And we've got 75% are, 50% of the corporate strategy measures are on target, and 75% of the key service delivery measures. So we have two types of indicators that we report within this. Obviously, some of those are challenging, and the majority of those are outside the council's control. But they are types of indicators that we use to look at how we respond and how we support our local communities. So some of those indicate a performance to us, but not necessarily the performance of the council. So again, I can go through those when we get to those in the report. In the first section, which is involving residents and improving their local area and equality of access, we can see 3 points 12 to 13, some of the key areas that have been delivered, and that includes work through the communities team, particularly around that supporting our communities through the COVID pandemic. The renovation works to Ashley Hall is actually one of the amber projects, and that's very much down to some of the issues that you get when renovating old buildings. So it very much will be back on track. But we had a slight delay on that because of some of the work that needed to be undertaken at that point.
I'll interrupt you there. I assume all this will be finished by September when Sir Lindsay has his G7 conference.
I would hope so. Once we get past this quarter, we are expecting that it should be back on track, and we'll be about to start the Q1 report. So hopefully we'll be getting good progress through from there. It's just one of those things within those projects which had already been taken into account as those were part of the risk for doing this. So it remains within budget, and it's the main works are still scheduled to be completed by July 2021, not 2020, as I can just see in the report. So when we look at the indicators, again, one performing better than target, the MVQ level 3, and that is actually booking some of the trends in other areas where that has gone down in some areas. So, but there are a number of indicators along some of those lines around the needs and stuff where we will see that they are not as good as they could be. When we look at clean, safe and healthy homes and communities, the homelessness and Russell-Fleeton strategy, the work on that has commenced. And again, to reiterate, this is the beginning of the new corporate strategy delivery. So a lot of these projects are in their very early stages at this point. The play and community spaces across the borough has progressed well. We can see that Westway Sports Campus, the installation of the grass and artificial pitches has continued. The designs for King George V playing fields were agreed with the lead member, and you can see that improvements will include changing facilities, a kiosk space and a foyer. One of the other projects around this is the extra care scheme and community facilities at Tatton. Again, this has made good progress. And we can see that it will result in affordable, suitable housing and a GP surgery, pharmacy, community cafe. So the design team have been working around this, and works have started, and those remediation works completed ahead of construction. So we always push back on what some of these terms mean. So the vibro pilling. And some of these terms, and we hope that that comes out in the report so that it can explain to members what some of these technical terms mean when they come forward, as we're not experts in many of these projects, we're most of our colleagues that deliver them. The performance of the key projects, all of these are on green at the moment, so they're performing within their timescales, and there are a couple of targets that are outside the threshold within this, and that really is the number of long-term empty properties. This has been consistent with the previous quarter. Some of this is down to the type of property that's not correcting the figure in that sense, but there is work to try and look at how we can bring that back on track. And the same with the number of affordable homes. Some of this is outside of the council's control as it relies on other providers, but we do have the Tatton scheme coming forward. So again, these number of affordable homes is one of those again where we look across other areas, and it's a particular issue. It's not something specific to this, but obviously there is quite an action plan within there, and I know that there has been some wider work around looking into this indicator, which has been part of the Director of Planning and Development. When we look at strong local economy on page 25, we look at the employment land at Olka Lane, where good progress has been made. I think the next progress around improvements to the town centres, the upgrade of the market and trader signage, that's all commenced, and the roof repairs and stripping out the existing toilets has commenced in the quarter. So works towards the plan are all progressing as planned, and the site at Bengal Street has progressed well as well. Technical works and survey of the site has been completed, and the master planning exercise conducted. So that is again progressing within the parameters of the project. So all those projects within that area are target and rated green. But again, within this, and I think, you know, again, down to some of the issues caused by the pandemic, there's been a knock-on impact on some of those indicators. We look at overall employment rates, 16 to 17-year-olds who are not in education, employment or training, and median workplace earnings. Some of these we need to monitor for a longer period of time to see whether it is a short-term and it will self-correct, or that we need to take some further action. So again, as we come through to the Q1 report, we will be taking quite a close look at where these indicators are moving. We can see that the employment rate in Chorley is below our target, and it has been steadily decreasing. Now it's in line with the average. So there is the work around the Kickstart scheme. Business engagement team has been engaging throughout the COVID-19, and particularly the government grant schemes that have been supported and rolled out. So there is a lot of work going on within that service at the moment. And again, we'll keep an eye on what happens with those indicators. When it comes to the not in education, employment or training, these do peak and trough throughout the year. However, we do anticipate that there has been some impact, obviously, around provision on education. So it's not an issue, again, peculiar to Chorley. And the overall Lancashire figure is 3%. So the Kickstart programme, again, one of these are the national measures. This is one of those ways that we can look to try and support that. And the Employment Task Force for Chorley has been established so that we can look at the issue of unemployment in the area. So again, it's very much looking at the partnership approach that we can use. Median workplace earnings, again, it's below the average for the region, but the area has achieved wage growth in line with the averages. Council continues to support and invest in the local economy. So the project to develop business units at Olka Lane, we hope that will attract and retain businesses, and we continue to work with partners to bring forward some industrial developments and market vacant sites such as Botany Bay and Buckshaw Village. The council's own development, Strawberry Fields, aims to attract and incubate high-value businesses who employ high-earning skilled staff. So there are a number of projects and initiatives that the council is undertaking that will help to address some of those issues within that indicator. The final priority of an ambitious council that does more to meet the needs of residents in the local area. We've heard tonight around shared services. I'm from shared services as well. That phase 2 has progressed well. We've seen the implementation of the shared chief executive, shared director roles. And then there are the ICT shared services that has come forward. So again, that progresses well, and we further move into the project to extend the borough-wide programme of improvements to street scene. That looks to, again, what Asim was saying before around implementing changes through technology. The mechanical sweeping schedule was implemented, and software testing's continued around tree plotting, grass cutting and car park inspections. And this is where we have seen some of that increase within the indicators within the service, where, you know, again, we will challenge to say that's quite a significant increase from last time. How's that happened? And some of that comes through because of the use of technology and the way that we've changed the way we work. The project to deliver sustainable public services, this is one that I'm actually involved with, and this is the development of a joint Chorley and South Ribble strategic partnership, where very much the South Ribble partnership has agreed to evolve itself and to combine with Chorley. And so we are currently working through that term of governance, the priorities, and we've had a very successful workshop in March with those partners, where we've identified some initial areas. That's health and well-being, employment, economic recovery, and data sharing and analysis. And this is really those 3 areas in which, as partners, with the 2 districts and a wide range of local service providers, as well as some of the wider regional, we can move forward to develop some new ways of working and improve access to services for many residents. The Green Agenda, the Climate Change Coordinator has now been appointed, and that will provide that additional capacity needed to deliver that programme. There's a development of the communication and engagement campaign that will help to promote the Green Agenda and wider elements of the project, which include clean air strategy. That's due to go out to public consultation in this quarter. It might already be out. And in fact, I think it is, because I've seen it on our website. So the clean air consultation is out at the moment. And there is a tree planting strategy that's been put in place. So again, that's going to be a new indicator that we're tracking internally throughout the coming year to see that that stays on track. See there that all projects within that priority are on track, and that there aren't any measures outside of the threshold or worse. When we do move into the performance of key service delivery measures, these are the wider organisational ones. You can see that 2 are worse than target. That's the town centre vacancy rate. So there's a number of businesses closed as a result of the pandemic. As you can see there, it's increased from the 9.7% recorded in Q3. So we can see there it's gone up to 10.3. In comparison to the other areas, the figure for Chorley's remain relatively low, but obviously we can see that there has been an impact through the pandemic. So they will continue to promote and promote Chorley as a place to come and do business, and the investment in the town centre, which is progressing around the Covered Market and Civic Square, hopefully will try and bolster that position. The number of miscollections per 100,000, I think that was covered by Asim in the previous paper, and I won't go over that again if you're happy with that. There are at the back on the Appendix A and B all the indicators together, which shows you any kind of key trends. I think it's clear to say that within the performance of the corporate strategy key measures, most are worse than the previous quarter in the previous year. However, I could say that there is still good performance there, and some of these are outside of our overall control. But we've got a role to play in how we address some of those and support local residents. I'm happy to take any questions if I can.
Yes. Have you got any questions?
Just about procedure, really. Is it the committee to invite cabinet members to the meeting? It has a cordial invitation been sent to to some of our other cabinet members. It's just I've rather a lot of questions, and I think it is probably appropriate if I'd do that outside the meeting. But if you could invite them for next time,
yes,
that would be really helpful.
Basically, this item was on the cabinet last Thursday, or was it last Thursday? Possibly then you should have raised some of the issues you have got. We really just accept this because it's all gone. I would prefer to be looking at what's been happening in the last 3 months. And these are some of the questions I was going to ask you. Have you any indication that some of the red triangles next quarter will be, green or circles? Because it would appear there are certainly more red triangles than I've seen for a long, long time.
So unfortunately, decisions are made before they come to scrutiny. So it is our job to be scrutinising the decisions that have been made at Cabinet, and probably not appropriate to have raised them at the Cabinet meeting themselves. These are issues that come in that we want to interrogate and compliment or reassure or ask more questions. There's an awful lot in these
There
this
is.
second item.
I mean, if you're talking about the red triangle, actions are being taken. It's a question of whether the actions are bearing fruit since the end of March, really. This is the question. And I agree. We're on way around. We should be looking at this before it goes to cabinet. But this doesn't happen with the programme, really, or the time scale of the programmes.
I'm sorry, I'm new to this committee,
Yeah.
but in my experience, we ask questions of cabinet members at scrutiny meetings, and they can bring along officers of support.
Well,
It's
yeah,
just,
yeah.
I'm just a request that perhaps for the next meeting, the
we can't get all the
invitations are
cabinet here
sent.
because all these are different directorates, aren't they? So you either get all the directors here, so you can ask the questions, but they are there at cabinet when this paper is available. Can I? Yeah, yes, Eddie. No, you carry on.
Agree with Julia about cabinet members should be here to be scrutinised. That's what scrutiny is in my perspective. Even if the cycle means it falls after cabinet, that's fine. That's what I would expect. That I should be asking cabinet members who then can lead to officers for support rather than me asking officers questions was what I expected. Maybe it is a conversation for another day. But the questions I have about 3. Do you want to do one at a time? Up to? Yeah, how we prefer to take them. That's fine, thank you. The first one was page 20 on the renovation works at Astley Hall. I wasn't sure how much of the contingency remains and whether we're likely to complete the project within budget. Because if we spend the contingency, I don't know how much work is left. Is it a concern that we're actually going to come back and ask for more money, or are we almost at the end? So if we spend the contingency, it's not so much of a concern.
So far, in terms of the project, the amber rating is very much because of the delays and having to use that contingency. But we can certainly take that question back for the detail from the project manager. We're expecting that it's to run on time and be a green project, which if that's green in the next one, it means the budget's fine and the overall timeline is fine.
Thank you. If I can, okay, to move to our next one, if that's all right. Thank you. So this was maybe more of a comment on this one, but like when you talk through the employment rate and the needs and all those areas, like page 26, the next 2 or 3 pages, I was actually quite surprised to see that Chorley was performing worse than Lancashire on a number of those areas, because Chorley doesn't really face the same structural problems that large parts of Lancashire would do, with deprivation, with housing, with schools. So to find ourselves the wrong side of the Lancashire average really is quite concerning. I do appreciate your point that a lot of these are out of the direct control of the council, but for me that's really quite concerning, and something, if we don't see a turnaround in those figures soon, we probably need to be doing a bit more scrutiny or asking some questions as to what can we do, what should we be doing with partners to address that. That was really more of a comment than a question, because I don't think there's anything any fair, reasonable answer you could give unless you offer anything up.
I think the only answer I would give to that is that within the service we do look at that, and so particularly where we see a consistent red triangle against some of these, we will be asking for more information, and the action plans each time that they come through on the quarter report. If it's the same, we challenge that back as well, so that we're looking at exactly what is being done to address it. So we as a service will keep on top of that, but the actual actions will come from the relevant officers that have this within their remit. So we certainly push back, particularly if scrutiny and cabinet want to challenge some of those, we can take that challenge back.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. That is really positive to hear that it is challenged, and we won't see the same, because obviously it's the first time I've seen some of these papers, so I don't know it's actually different to last time, but I do appreciate that. So as my last question was, at page 23, was on long-term empty properties. What's the average length of time a property remains on the long-term property list? Just some. See, I suppose my concern is, have we got some that stagnate and sit there for a long time? Some come in and we're quite good at moving some of those out, or is the actual, are they all flowing through in a reasonable period? That expands on it. Thank you.
I don't have an actual average, but having looked over these reports, this particular property divided into flats seems to be a particular one that is recurring. So again, we've asked for a bit more information around this. It seems to be lingering in the system there. So that's often what we'll push back on as well. But I can try and get you an average. We can certainly ask that question and provide that back to you.
I appreciate that. Obviously, if you send it to chair, it can go to committee rather than just myself. Thank you.
I've just got one question on page 31, the town centre vacancy rate. It says here that you action taken is to, can't even read it. It's been, all the vacancies have been handed to a particular letting agent. Is that something that's new to the council, or have they, you know, or is that the best way forward?
Thank you. I think with most of these, the property and estates, they look at what's the best way to get to the market. I don't know the exact answer to that, but I would be surprised if they haven't used things like that before. Certainly, this is a general package of promoting these offers out to market, as well as how we can, you know, promote the actual availability of what is out there. Again, I can take that back to see if this is a new way of doing it. But being fairly new myself, I'm not overly sure what back on that. But it certainly looks to me like a standard package of how you would look to fill vacant properties, particularly on the commercial market.
I mean, one just hopes that as the pandemic eases and we can get about more, that people will then start looking to get back into the shops and open the economy up really in Chorley. But it is a worry that every time you walk into Chorley these days, there's another shop closed down or boarded up, and it is starting to look, you know, a bit of a worry for the council, especially for the money that they will be getting for rents, which of course they're not getting now. So it is a worry all round, and we just hope the letting agent is on the ball and getting cracking, trying to get people back into Chorley, into the shops.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And I think it is just worth noting that we are still below the Northwest rate and the national. It's creeping ever closer, but we are still under there. So hopefully with the COVID pandemic and some of the relaxation, obviously there are current issues, but we very much hope that, you know, we should be able to start to recover. But it's more a national picture as well as just something peculiar here.
Yes, Sarah.
Thanks, Chair. I'm the councillor for Chorley North West Ward, and that covers the whole of the town centre. And one of the reasons why I was interested in being a councillor is because one of my passions is for supporting local businesses. I'm just looking at the promotional activities continuing to be delivered. Will that include the Choose Chorley initiative carrying on?
I would assume it is. Again, I can't give an exact answer to that. I think they provide this package now. Again, we could provide some further detail and come back to committee on that through the chair. But certainly it is around the promotion of Chorley as a place, and the Choose Chorley is still there. So I would expect that it is. But I can certainly ask the officer in that area to come back.
Councillor Nevitt, please ask a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, like Councillor Rigger, I've got 3 questions. So I'll rattle through those as quickly as possible. But before that, I'd just like to say I agree with what Councillor Berry and Councillor Rigger have both said about the purpose of this committee. I know as new councillors, we're all quite new to this, but I think I would agree with them about inviting cabinet members and directors along. I think we saw with that first report how that works really well. We definitely agree having officers report back to us is really useful, but where there are questions that need to be raised of cabinet members, this is the time and the place to do that. My first question would be on the Astley Hall renovations. I know this is an AMBER programme, and I know for better or worse, council have kind of been frozen out of decisions on thinking about G7, but let's just say worst case scenario, either works aren't completed in time for September, or heaven forbid something happens between July and September, which makes that an unsuitable or unsafe venue. Have we got an alternative venue for the G7 to use?
Well, I don't think that the G7 it's not within my remit. You know, and understanding what the plans are with that. That's obviously with Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker, and obviously we're providing the venue. The works to be completed in July 2020. I can certainly. You know, we'll be reporting this back in Q1, and we're due to receive all the highlight reports by the 15th. So we'll have a clear position that this is on track. We are expecting it to be on track. So we can certainly see. I would assume there is a risk strategy involved, but we can come back to that with some more information needed.
Second question,
Okay, thank you. My second question was on affordable housing. 47, you say, has been delivered in the last quarter, which is less than half the target, which is quite worrying. But even more worrying when we compare it to, say, this quarter 2 years ago, we're basically just over a fifth compared to the 202 delivered in Q4 2018-19. I know you argued there that Tatton Gardens will be able to make up some of the numbers. Of course, the 90 affordable flats at Tatton Gardens in of itself won't even fulfil 1 quarter's targets. Will probably be delivered over multiple quarters. So what other measures can we be putting in place? I imagine a lot of this is because house building might have decelerated in the last few quarters. So that might have a bearing on comparing it with the other Q4 targets. But again, what kind of measures can we be putting in place to really get this on track without relying on Tatton Gardens to pull the weight?
Thank you. I think this is an indicator where there are a number of factors that play into this, particularly market forces at the moment. You rightly sort of say that house building has slowed down over the past year, and that's due to some of the restrictions and some of the ability to carry on. Although a lot of the time, being able to work on construction sites has been permitted, there have been other issues around some of the things that companies have faced, which will include things like supplies, etc. The actions, I think, the current local plan is being developed, and it does highlight there around the limited land supply. So again, this is where the longer term strategic position is being looked at through the local plan in terms of how sites can be brought forward. So there are a number of issues. It's quite a complicated indicator, and it's certainly one that keeps the council focused on providing affordable homes, particularly working with other providers as well as itself. So the list of actions that are in there are fairly comprehensive at the moment, and the officers are working through those to look at this. And this is one that we continually have flagged to keep looking at its progress and checking that each quarter.
Okay, councillor Devitt, any further questions?
Just one last question, if I may, Chair. On the employment rate, which you mentioned is steadily decreasing at the moment, currently sitting at 74.6%. I think, maybe this is just being new to this committee, but the idea of 1 in 4 residents, if this, working age, if this statistic is right, being out of work is pretty worrying. Is there any indication what kind of demographics we're looking at? Is this a problem affecting young people, for instance? I know you link this to a slight increase in the number of young people not in full-time education. Surely, if we're looking at the demographics of this, whether it's age groups based on gender, ethnicity, social class, these kind of things, that would affect our approach to trying to improve the employment rate.
Thank you. The statistics on this come externally from NOMIS. They don't break it down into some of those details. We can certainly, I think there is a gender split, but it covers working age, which I think goes up to 64. It's a working age period, so it doesn't actually break it down into specific age groups from the data set that we use. We can certainly look to see if there are other wider sets, certainly from the team that looks at this. I know that the DWP often has greater detail on some of these areas than ourselves do, and we do work with them on that. So if they would like a breakdown, we can certainly ask the team to come back with some more information on that demographic. That's an offer to provide.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes.
On the town centre vacancy, the town centre vacancy rate, that's not only the council properties but private properties as well, isn't it? Now, I know that we as a council are taking action to retain businesses which are probably struggling through the pandemic. Is there any evidence to say that the private landlords aren't doing the same, that they're still required, they're not allowing a bit of movement for the tenant to continue the business?
Thank you. It's very much a matter for the private landlords. There will be, different approaches that they take. Obviously, there is a lot of support out there that's being provided by central government in terms of the business grants and supports. And as a council, we process those and very much promote those to try and keep businesses in those buildings. The council, again, over its own estate, has much more control in how it can try and promote that, as we are a landlord itself. So the private landlords, we don't have any sort of overall indication on that, but obviously where they have tenants, they will be creating rent, so it will certainly be within their interest to do so. It's again going to be one of these, as we come out of COVID recovery, to look at how things are recovering in the economy, and it's going to be a bit of a national picture.
Yes, Julia.
On this same subject, I just want to welcome that Alka Lane is progressing really well. But my concern is, what is the council? Does the council have data or any information about how things are returned, how businesses are returning to work physically in their buildings, and whether or not there's going to be a significant departure from working on site and working in the home, and obviously this long-term, short-term is going to have impact on the sort of business sites or stock that we have within the borough. So are there any plans to analyse that or survey businesses to get a feeling that we've still got the confidence that there is a return cautiously to work in office sites, or is this broken?
Thank you, and you raise a really good question, and I think that is one where there's a bit too early at the moment to understand fully what businesses' decisions they're making, particularly with the recent delay to the full opening or relaxation of restrictions. There is certainly ongoing discourse in terms of the part-time work week from home to working in the office environment, and a number of businesses are clearly making different types of decisions on whether they want their employees in an office 5 days a week or whether they will want them to have more flexibility. So there's still some discussions that obviously that are being taken on that, and I think it'll be a worthwhile exercise to actually do some sort of research, and certainly I think our team could take some of that away and work with the business team to look at if there is any emerging evidence or information, but it's certainly one that's early at this stage, but probably a good time to move forward with that.
Thank you. Could I just ask another question about that's relevant to employment? What are we doing to attract training partners into the borough to ensure that any skill shortages that there are in our locality or beyond, that we can perhaps fill, particularly with young people or women returning to work, and our residents from diverse groups?
So this is actually something that the partnerships have started to highlight. There is an emerging group from Runshaw College, which brings together different employers to start looking at what the skill gaps are on a local basis. We can go to the sort of LEP, the Enterprise Partnership, and find out the general numbers, but Runshaw's taking quite a proactive stance in working with a number of, across Chorley and South Ribble to ask employers what are the gaps that you have and what are the skills that we need to develop or offer out. So there is work ongoing around that, and I certainly think as the partnership takes its agenda forward, economy and skills, and particularly addressing individuals where we can try and raise aspiration, we can try and develop different routes into employment. That is something that partners, particularly from a South Ribble side, that's been a strength of its previous partnership, working around economy and businesses. So we're hoping to bring that into the Chorley partnership arena as those two partnerships come together, and we're working through that action plan. An early stage development now. We'll be meeting with partners in July to go through some of those high level actions. And from September, we expect that the partnership will be running forward. That will work in conjunction with Chorley Council. It will also work in conjunction with South Ribble and partners. And it's really about what we can do to work with our education providers, but then also with our communities in terms of understanding need, aspiration.
I'll take all your comments on board. I'll talk to Matthew and directors about your thoughts about looking at scrutinising the corporate policy results on a quarterly basis, and I'll bring it back to the meeting next Thursday if you're happy with that. Okay. So, Howard, thank you very much indeed. You covered that very well. So, some of the questions asked put you on the spot a bit, but thank you for that. And I said all along that there are more red triangles than I've seen for a long, long time. So work has to be done to get the red triangles off the court policy. So thank you all. I've no other further business. So thank you for your attendance this evening. Look forward to seeing you all next Thursday, isn't it? Next Thursday for the full scrutiny committee meeting. So thank you. Safe journey home. And thank you for the virtual meeting for the two councillors and Adrian for being with us this evening. And the gentleman over there, I should have introduced you. So thank you for being here tonight anyway.